The Dallas Cowboys pulled out a miraculous 20-19 win on a special edition of Monday Night Football against the Lions in a game that was just unbelievable to keep the Cowboys in the NFC East race and knock off the hottest can be Detroit Lions. Don't get it twisted. The Cowboys won this game through and through. They were 7-0 at home. They elevate that streak to 8-0. They should have had that touchdown drive, but CeeDee Lamb fumbled it through the end zone. You can't really blame him for that, considering that's just a freak play, and he had an amazing game across the board, aside from, of course, that one drive. Both teams had their lucky breaks, but Detroit benefited much more from them. I mean, we just talked about that fumble through the end zone. Jared Goff threw 2 interceptions, and they even had this moment where Jameson Williams caught a deep pass to get them all the way down to the 15 with a chance to massively increase their chances of winning this game. And they did absolutely nothing with it, ended up settling for a field goal. And moments like that really defined this game for the Detroit Lions, as they just couldn't find anything in the red zone, even especially when they're just in Dallas territory in general. They could not find anything on offense, and that ultimately led to their demise in this 20-19 loss. Dallas felt dominant the entire time. The game was close the entire time. It was a one-possession game the entire time, but Dallas felt like they had all the momentum, and they were dominating the entire game through and through, primarily off the backs of the passing game. CeeDee Lamb was absolutely incredible. He had 13 receptions for 227 yards, an average of 17.5 yards per reception, and of course a touchdown. Tony Pollard had 16 carries for 49 yards, and Dak Prescott was 26 for 38 for 345 yards, 2 touchdowns, and just 1 interception compared to Jared Goff's 2. That passing game was absolutely incredible. Brandon Cooks played a major role as well. CeeDee Lamb was obviously great. He was just cutting up Cam Sutton this entire game. And those deep threat opportunities against this weak Lions secondary really bailed out the Cowboys when Dak Prescott was facing immense pressure from that Lions front seven. That was really the one thing for the Lions that sort of was limiting the Cowboys offense and stopping them from settling into a rhythm, was the fact that Aiden Hutchinson was in the backfield over and over again, among other players, of course, in that Lions defensive line. But what Dak Prescott was able to do is you may just accidentally find a 25-yard gain from that, because the Lions secondary is so unstable, and they have these fast receivers like CeeDee Lamb and Brandon Cooks that are able to find space and get open for their quarterback, Dak Prescott. The defense settled in when it needed to, right, for the Cowboys. They stopped the Lions from continuing those long rhythmical drives where they had maybe they had Amon-Ra St. Brown on a slant, maybe they had David Montgomery or Jahmyr Gibbs to get a drive going early on. But once they crept into Dallas territory over and over in this game, then when the Cowboys defense settled in, they lost all opportunity of finding the end zone. Immediately when they crossed the 50-yard line, the Cowboys defense came up clutch when it needed to. It did sort of fall off towards the end of that game, but they did what it needed to do in clutch moments. Now, it wasn't all sunshine and rainbows for the Cowboys, of course. The run game had nothing for most of the game. Tony Pollard and Dak Prescott even sort of broke through in the run game late in the fourth quarter, but the Lions front seven, like I said, really was the main thing preventing Dallas from getting into a rhythm. When the Cowboys did get into a rhythm, you saw that long drive that ultimately led up to that fumble through the end zone, but that could have been a touchdown. You saw some other great field goal drives that they could have gotten to the end zone. The offense really stalled in the middle of the game. It felt like they sort of got complacent, where they had the lead after that electric 92-yard touchdown reception by CeeDee Lamb. And it seemed like they sort of got complacent there towards the middle of the game when the defense was doing its job, and they maybe would get to midfield and then run out of gas. And it really, the soft coverage from the Cowboys on defense was another problem. But the offense, like I said, really stalled there, where the Lions front seven, they would stop the run on 1st and 2nd down, and that set up 3rd and 8, 3rd and 10 for the Cowboys. And you're just not going to succeed on those plays at a high enough rate in order to put yourself massively in the lead, especially over a team like the Lions. And the Lions on offense, especially in that final drive, were able to gain so much yardage in such a short amount of time because of the soft coverage we saw from the Cowboys. And that ultimately ended up being a problem for this Dallas team. They got the job done in the end. Like I said, the defense did what it needed to do eventually. That soft coverage allowed the Lions to sort of get into field goal range, but once they got there, maybe it was a DeMarcus Lawrence sack, maybe it was a Micah Parsons batted down pass, whatever it was, the Cowboys were there time and time again in the clutch moments when they needed to. But really, I think both teams won this game because they both learned something about themselves, what they need to improve on moving forward, and what they maybe succeeded in a game against another playoff team that you very well could meet in the postseason. And if you don't, you're going to play a team like it, or at least at a similar strength to it in the postseason. The Lions, what did they do well? They had a great front seven, right? Aiden Hutchinson was incredible all game, even against a two-time Pro Bowler. On the other side for the Cowboys, they got great QB pressures. The run defense looked great. They took away some crossing routes at times too that I thought was a great sign for the Lions, even though the deep ball was still a constant threat from the Cowboys with that unstable secondary. But Brian Branch had a great game as well too. The defense really got to Dallas in the middle of the game. I was talking about the Cowboys, just sort of that offense stalling, and the front seven was just fighting it out, grinding it out every single drive for this Lions defense. And on offense, the offensive side, the run game helped quite a bit as well, where if that run game, if that was just a void and there was nothing there, the Lions would have absolutely nothing on offense. But that run game really helped fuel things, whether it's starting drives or keeping them going, just keeping that offense churning and increasing the likelihood that they could get to the end zone once again. But those drives just ran out of gas. The defense, when the Cowboys defense settled in, and the Lions offense was doing it to themselves for a majority of this game as well too, stopping themselves from getting into the end zone, where once they get into field goal range, it's a 3 and out from there, right? Maybe they get one more first down, but especially early on in this game, the Lions, their drive just seemed to run out of gas. They couldn't put together a finishing drive in Dallas territory. They, of course, had that massive throw, Jameson Williams, and that big play really helped them out a lot, allowed them to get a field goal and cut the lead a little bit closer. But if that's a touchdown, this game has a little bit of a different story to it, and there were multiple other drives similar to that where it felt like they could have gotten the end zone, but instead had to settle for a field goal in the red zone. The passing game down the stretch fell apart for the Lions as well. Jared Goff threw 2 terrible picks on screen passes where he was rushed by DeMarcus Lawrence or Micah Parsons on that defensive line, on that defensive front for the Cowboys, but making that rush decision, it's a bad decision both times, an interception, 2 very costly ones, one of which we thought was going to end the game for the Lions. But they ultimately, got the ball back again and marched down, had their first great complete drive of the entire game. Couldn't ultimately finish it out. And of course, we had that controversial exchange of penalties, which we can argue, but we can go round and round arguing about all day long. I really don't think it's worth it. But ultimately, the Cowboys won this game. But if that 2-point conversion had gone the right way, if Jared Goff had thrown an accurate pass on that final 2-point conversion try and the Lions win this game, both teams, it felt like won, right? Because, like I said, they both learned something from moving into the postseason, playing against a great team. It's great playoff type experience. It really felt like a Monday night wild card game throughout the entire thing. But also it felt like we wouldn't be surprised if the Lions had won this game 21-20 when we zoom out and look back on it. Yes, they were on the back foot the entire game. I'm glad the Cowboys won. I think they deserved it more. But either one of these teams could have been the winning. If you did a blind test, either one of these teams could have been the winning team at the end of this game. Moving forward, the Lions still have accomplished so much this season. I think this was a valuable playoff type experience that they can learn from and advance from moving forward into the postseason. Hopefully they can get right next week in the final week of the season against the Vikings as they head into the playoffs. Dallas, on the other hand, they can still make a run at an NFC East title, and I very much expect them to be capable of that. They need the Eagles to lose one of their last 2 games, which is very possible, and the Cowboys, of course, need to take care of business next week. But either way, They're looking great moving forward as we roll into the postseason. No one is going to want to play them, whether they're going on the road to play the Tampa Bay Buccaneers or they host a wild card team in that first round of the NFL playoffs. Either way, I'm very excited to see these two teams play more games, of course, in this postseason, and I hope that they play each other again. That would be a phenomenal wild card weekend matchup, maybe on Monday Night Football again. Like I said, this really did feel like a Monday Night Football matchup between the Cowboys and the Lions. It was incredible, but at the end of the day, the Lions offense, they need to get some things figured out. The secondary, I don't know if it's a fixable problem at this point. But the offense, Jared Goff was 19 for 34 in this game for 271 yards, a touchdown, and 2 interceptions. I really hope that the offense can sort of fix itself, primarily the passing game, because it really felt like they didn't have much going for them for the majority of this game, especially in the red zone and in Dallas territory overall. If they can get that remedied, especially in this Week 18 game against Minnesota, could be a massive get-right opportunity. You don't want to have a losing streak heading into the playoffs, especially for an inexperienced playoff team like the Detroit Lions. But I'm excited about the Cowboys. When Jimmy Johnson was inducted into the Hall of Fame, they pulled out a massive win, showing that the Cowboys may not be chokers once again in this NFL playoffs. In this game right here, it's a close game against a great team. Very well could be a playoff matchup. They didn't choke this time. They almost did, but they didn't choke this time. Maybe that's indicative of a deeper playoff run this year for the Dallas Cowboys. Either way, the final score, Cowboys 20, Lions 19 on a special edition of Monday Night Football, and I'm very excited to see both of these teams play again this year.